The rhythmic thump-thump of the heart monitor was a familiar melody in Dr. Lena Thorne's world, a constant reminder of life's fragile tenacity. Her hands, steady and precise, moved with an almost ethereal grace, stitching a delicate bypass onto the quivering muscle. The operating room, usually a theater of high-stakes tension, felt, at this moment, like a serene ballet. Another successful bypass. Another life extended. The scrub nurse offered a quiet, "Excellent work, Dr. Thorne," and Lena, beneath her mask, allowed herself a small, fleeting smile of satisfaction. This was her calling, her domain, where merit was unambiguous and competence reigned supreme. Later that evening, the sterile scent of the hospital replaced by the comforting aroma of her own cooking, Lena watched her two children, Marcus and Chloe, engage in a spirited, if slightly chaotic, building competition with Legos on the living room rug. 10-year-old Marcus, with his thoughtful gaze and methodical approach, was constructing a futuristic city. 7-year-old Chloe, all boundless energy and vibrant imagination, was adding a fantastical, brightly colored castle. Lena leaned back on the plush sofa, a glass of iced tea in hand, a rare moment of stillness after a demanding day. The low hum of their contented chatter filled the space, a symphony far more precious than any professional accolade. "Mom, look! My castle has a secret dungeon for dragons," Chloe exclaimed, holding up a brightly colored turret. "And my city has a drone delivery system for homework," Marcus countered, ever the pragmatist. Lena laughed, a warm, genuine sound. Both equally important, I'm sure. She adored these moments, the unvarnished joy and boundless potential her children embodied. They were the driving force behind her relentless pursuit of excellence, the reason she sought not just a house, but a home, a sanctuary where their dreams could truly take root and flourish. Her gaze drifted to her laptop, open on the coffee table. The screen glowed with an image that had captivated her for weeks, a stately colonial revival, nestled among mature oak trees, its expansive front porch beckoning. This wasn't just a house, it was the house. It was located in Arbor Ridge, an exclusive, predominantly white neighborhood known for its impeccable landscaping, top-tier public schools, and a community lauded for its safety and active social calendar. The online listing promised sprawling green lawns, a sunlit study perfect for late-night research, and a backyard large enough for a small army of dragons and a drone landing pad. It was everything she had envisioned for her family's next chapter. It represented stability, opportunity, and the tangible reward for years of relentless dedication. Lena clicked through the photos again, a rare spark of unreserved joy flickering within her. The polished hardwood floors, the gourmet kitchen, the elegant French doors leading to a flagstone patio. Each detail whispered promises of a future she had meticulously planned. This wasn't merely an upgrade. It was an investment in their happiness, a statement of their arrival. With a determined sigh, Lena picked up her phone. The listing agent was a Mr. Arthur Sterling, a name synonymous with Arbor Ridge real estate. His online profile depicted a man of polished charm, silver hair, a confident smile, a suit that spoke of quiet wealth. She dialed, her professional demeanor instantly clicking into place. "Arthur Sterling, Sterling Realty, how may I help you?" The voice on the other end was smooth, impeccably modulated, radiating an aura of seasoned authority and geniality. "Good evening, Mr. Sterling. My name is Dr. Lena Thorne. I'm calling about your listing on Rosewood Lane in Arbor Ridge." Lena's voice was clear, articulate, projecting the same confidence she wielded in the operating room. "Ah, Rosewood Lane. An exquisite property, Dr. Thorne, truly one of Arbor Ridge's finest. Excellent taste, if I may say so." Sterling's tone was immediately effusive, dripping with practiced charm. "It just came back on the market, rather unexpectedly. Are you familiar with the area?" "I am, yes. I've been researching Arbor Ridge extensively. My children are at Lincoln Elementary, and the schools in your district are precisely what we're looking for. I'm a cardiovascular surgeon at City General, and I'm looking to settle my family into a long-term home." Lena laid out her credentials, not out of boastfulness, but out of a pragmatic understanding of the competitive nature of the market. She wanted to establish her serious intent and financial capability up front. A surgeon? How wonderful! Sterling's enthusiasm, while still present, seemed to acquire a microscopic, almost imperceptible shift. A tiny hesitation, a fractional delay before his next words. And Lincoln Elementary, a fine school indeed. Though, of course, the Arbor Ridge schools operate on a slightly different curriculum, you understand. More accelerated. He chuckled, a light, airy sound that didn't quite reach his eyes, if Lena could judge from the timbre of his voice alone. But yes, Rosewood Lane. It truly embodies the spirit of Arbor Ridge. A very unique community. Lena's analytical mind, trained to detect the slightest anomaly in a patient's vital signs, registered the subtle change. Unique, she mused internally. It was a perfectly innocuous word, yet in Sterling's delivery, it felt loaded. But she pushed the thought aside. Perhaps she was overly sensitive. The house was magnificent. I'm very interested in scheduling a viewing as soon as possible, Mr. Sterling. I'm quite serious about making an offer. She kept her voice firm, professional. Of course, of course. Well, let me just check my calendar. It's a rather busy time for us, you know, with the market picking up. But I'm sure we can find something. His tone was still polite, but the initial burst of unbridled welcoming zeal had noticeably, subtly, diminished. The first faint note of discord in what had seemed a perfectly harmonious overture. Lena hung up the phone, a faint, almost imperceptible knot tightening in her stomach. Sterling's initial effusiveness had evaporated quicker than morning dew, replaced by a polite but distinct shift in tone. She dismissed it as the typical guardedness of a high-end agent. She was a professional, she understood the game. But as the week progressed, the subtle deflections began to accumulate, forming a pattern that was harder to ignore. Her initial follow-up email, a concise restatement of her interest and availability, was met with a delay. 2 days later, Sterling replied, not with concrete viewing times for Rosewood Lane, but with a series of vague apologies about scheduling conflicts and the seller's busy schedule. Then came the suggestions. Dr. Thorne, while Rosewood Lane is truly exceptional, Sterling's email read, his polished prose masking an underlying agenda. I've taken the liberty of identifying a few other properties that might also be an excellent fit for your discerning taste and family needs. These homes are located in Silver Creek, a rapidly developing community known for its vibrant cultural landscape and excellent value. They offer a more contemporary feel, perhaps better suited to a family with young children. Lena scrolled through the attached listings. Silver Creek was indeed a diverse neighborhood, but it was also a good 20-minute drive from Arbor Ridge, with significantly lower property values and schools that, while decent, did not boast the same academic rankings as those in Arbor Ridge. She noted the phrase, vibrant cultural landscape, a thinly veiled descriptor she'd heard before, a polite code for diverse, not exclusively white. She replied promptly, her professionalism unblemished. Thank you for these suggestions, Mr. Sterling. However, my primary interest remains Rosewood Lane and Arbor Ridge. The school district and the specific amenities of that community are paramount for my children. Could we please focus on securing a viewing for that property first? The phone rang an hour later. It was Sterling. Dr. Thorne, I appreciate your focused approach, he began, his voice still smooth as polished stone, yet now with an undercurrent of well-practiced, patronizing helpfulness. But I must be candid with you. Rosewood Lane, and indeed Arbor Ridge as a whole, is quite unique. Very established. Many of the residents have lived there for generations, if you understand what I mean. It's a tight-knit community. He paused, letting the words hang in the air, allowing Lena to interpret the unspoken subtext. Established. Generations. Tight-knit. Words that, for a black family, could easily translate to not for you. I do understand, Mr. Sterling, Lena responded, her voice betraying no emotion, though her internal alarm bells were beginning to clang. And that sense of community is precisely what appeals to me. My family values stability and a supportive environment. She was not going to give him an inch. Sterling chuckled, a sound that felt more like a polite cough than genuine amusement. Of course, of course. Excellent. But sometimes, Dr. Thorne, when a community has such deep roots, it can be an adjustment for newcomers, especially for families seeking to integrate. We want you to be happy in your new home, don't we? To feel truly at ease. He carefully chose his words, each one a subtle push, a gentle nudge away from her stated desire. It wasn't overt racism, not a slur or an insult. It was far more insidious, a sophisticated dance of implication and suggestion, designed to make her feel like the outsider, the one who wouldn't fit in. I am confident in my family's ability to integrate into any community, Mr. Sterling, Lena stated, her voice firm, unwavering. I simply require the opportunity to see the property. A beat of silence. Then, Sterling's voice dropped, becoming lower, more confidential, almost conspiratorial, as if he were sharing a profound, regrettable truth. Dr. Thorne, if I'm being entirely honest, for a family like yours, you'd be the only ones in that neighborhood. It might be an adjustment. The words hung heavy in the air, stark and undeniable. You'd be the only ones. The casual cruelty of it, delivered with such a practiced air of sincere concern, was breathtaking. It was a polite dismissal, an elegant form of exclusion, perfectly calibrated to avoid any explicit violation of fair housing laws while delivering the message loud and clear. He hadn't said black family. He hadn't used a racial slur. He hadn't even said, you won't fit in. He had merely stated a demographic fact, and then overlaid it with a paternalistic concern for her adjustment. Lena's composure, a shield forged through years of professional pressure and personal resilience, remained uncracked. Not a muscle in her face twitched. But internally, her analytical mind, accustomed to dissecting complex medical data, immediately registered the blatant racial steering. It was a textbook case, subtle yet unmistakable. The casual prejudice, the assumption that her family's race dictated their suitability for a neighborhood, the thinly veiled condescension, it all coalesced into a sharp, cold realization. This wasn't just a reluctant agent. This was a gatekeeper, expertly wielding microaggressions and passive aggression to maintain an unspoken, discriminatory status quo. In that precise moment, something within Lena clicked into place. It wasn't anger that surged, but a quiet, formidable resolve. Her hidden mechanism, a deep-seated understanding of fair housing law, a network of legal contacts forged during a previous professional skirmish against institutional bias, and an unwavering commitment to justice, activated. Sterling had just made his fatal error. He had underestimated his victim, believing his subtle tactics were impenetrable. He had no idea he had just poked a sleeping dragon, an intelligent, resourceful woman who would not be deterred, but rather ignited. I understand, Mr. Sterling, Lena stated, her voice calm, almost serene, a polite but firm smile now, she imagined, playing on her lips. Nevertheless, I'd still like to see the house in Arbor Ridge. Sterling, clearly expecting a different response, perhaps an understanding sigh, a polite concession, or even a hint of frustration, was momentarily caught off guard by Lena's unwavering resolve. Her voice, though calm, carried an undeniable note of steel. The confident, almost pitying tone he'd adopted faltered. Very well, Dr. Thorne. He recovered, a practiced smile audible in his voice, though it now felt stretched and thin. His eagerness had vanished, replaced by a cool, almost passive-aggressive professionalism. I'll see what I can do. It might take a few days to coordinate with the sellers. I'll get back to you by the end of the week. I look forward to hearing from you, Mr. Sterling, Lena replied. The polite smile she envisioned now genuinely plastered on her face, masking a quiet, burning determination. She ended the call, the silence that followed feeling both heavy and pregnant with possibility. She didn't immediately move. She sat on the sofa, the Lego city and castle still standing as testament to innocent joy, a stark contrast to the insidious ugliness she had just encountered. Her mind, however, was already whirring, systematically processing Sterling's every word, every nuance. He had laid out his biases with a surgeon's precision, using the scalpel of polite suggestion to carve out a line of exclusion. But Lena was also a surgeon. She knew how to dissect, how to find the root cause, and how to apply the right instruments for repair. Her first move was not one of emotional outburst or confrontational anger. It was one of meticulous, almost clinical, documentation. She opened a new, encrypted document on her laptop, titled simply, Sterling Realty, Case File. Date, current date, time, current time. Entry 1. Phone call with Mr. Arthur Sterling regarding Rosewood Lane property, Arbor Ridge. Summary. Expressed strong interest. Sterling initially effusive, then subtle shift in tone when credentials presented. Redirected to Silver Creek properties, vibrant cultural landscape. Keywords/phrases used by Sterling. Unique, established, generations, tight-knit community, adjustment for newcomers. Specific quote, Dr. Thorne, if I'm being entirely honest, for a family like yours, you'd be the only ones in that neighborhood. It might be an adjustment. She then compiled an exhaustive list of every interaction. The initial website inquiry, the properties he had sent her, and those he hadn't, the dates and times of calls and emails. She noted the subtle differences in his language when describing Arbor Ridge versus Silver Creek. For Arbor Ridge, it was about legacy and exclusivity. For Silver Creek, it was value and diversity. The contrast, when laid out systematically, was damning. This wasn't a casual oversight. It was a deliberate strategy. Next, Lena turned to her phone. She scrolled through her contacts, past colleagues and former mentors, until she found the name she needed, Eliza Vance, NFHA Legal. Eliza was a formidable legal mind, a senior counsel at the National Fair Housing Alliance, an organization dedicated to combating housing discrimination. They had met years ago when Lena, as a junior resident, had quietly supported a colleague facing a different, though equally insidious, form of workplace discrimination. Eliza had been the quiet force behind the scenes, offering strategic advice and legal pathways. Lena composed an email, precise and dispassionate, mirroring her professional communication style. Subject: Inquiry regarding potential fair housing violation. Dear Eliza, I hope this email finds you well. I am writing to you in a professional capacity, seeking guidance regarding a recent experience on the real estate market. I am in the process of attempting to purchase a home in the Arbor Ridge neighborhood, specifically a property on Rosewood Lane, through agent Arthur Sterling of Sterling Realty. My interactions with Mr. Sterling have raised concerns regarding potential racial steering. While his language has been consistently polite, he has employed a series of veiled phrases and suggestions that imply my family would not be a suitable fit for this predominantly white community. The most direct statement was, for a family like yours, you'd be the only ones in that neighborhood. It might be an adjustment. I have begun meticulously documenting all communications and proposed properties. I would appreciate any information you could provide regarding established legal precedents, procedures for initiating a formal complaint, or the process for engaging testers in such investigations. I am committed to pursuing this matter thoroughly, not just for my own family, but potentially for others who may have faced similar, subtle barriers. Please let me know if a call would be more appropriate. I am available at your convenience. Best regards, Dr. Lena Thorne, cardiovascular surgeon, City General Hospital. With a quiet click, she sent the email. This was her first strike, silent and unseen by Arthur Sterling, but potent. She wasn't seeking confrontation. She was initiating a protocol. She wasn't simply a prospective homebuyer. She was now an architect of retribution, carefully laying the groundwork for a systemic overhaul. Sterling, in his insulated world of privilege and polite prejudice, had no idea the storm he had just unwittingly invited. The game had just begun, and Lena Thorne was playing for much higher stakes than just a dream home. She was playing for justice. The few days Sterling promised stretched into over a week. Lena, still outwardly composed, maintained her diligent, if somewhat detached, correspondence with him. Each email she sent, inquiring about Rosewood Lane, was met with an apology, a new, unforeseen complication, or another unsolicited suggestion for properties in Silver Creek or other diverse, less affluent areas. He was relentless in his redirection, always polite, always helpful, never directly refusing, yet never actually facilitating her primary request. When a viewing for Rosewood Lane finally materialized, it was on a Tuesday afternoon, a time Lena knew would be difficult for most working professionals, particularly one with children. She rearranged her surgical schedule with the precision of a master chess player, ensuring she could attend. The house itself was even more breathtaking in person. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, illuminating the gleaming hardwood floors. The backyard, an emerald expanse, beckoned with its promise of freedom and play. Lena walked through each room, her heart aching with a familiar longing for this place to be her family's future. Yet, Sterling, who accompanied her, behaved like a man performing a perfunctory duty. He offered minimal information, his descriptions clipped and unenthusiastic. He didn't highlight the architectural details, the recent upgrades, or the unique features of the property, as he had so effusively done in his initial emails. Instead, he subtly steered the conversation to logistical challenges, the long commute from this particular street to City General, the intensity of the school's parent-teacher association, the very active neighborhood watch that might find a new family an anomaly. "You know, Dr. Thorne," Sterling mused, leaning against the kitchen island, seemingly lost in thought. "Arbor Ridge is very much a keeping up with the Joneses kind of place. Some families find that pressure rather taxing, especially if one isn't accustomed to it." His gaze, though fleeting, seemed to suggest her not being accustomed to it. Lena simply nodded, her expression unreadable. She asked pointed questions about property taxes, utility costs, and neighborhood bylaws, questions that demanded concrete answers, not vague insinuations. Sterling provided them, but with an air of almost weary resignation, as if she were simply going through the motions, destined to be disappointed. He rushed her through the viewing, clearly eager to conclude the appointment. In contrast, when she had, out of curiosity, agreed to view a property in Silver Creek earlier that week, Sterling had been animated, singing the praises of its vibrant sense of community and the wonderful mix of cultures. The disparity in his approach was stark, further solidifying the evidence for her growing ledger. Back in her home office, Lena meticulously added the details of the Rosewood Lane viewing to her digital file. She included the date, time, Sterling's body language, and every subtly loaded phrase he had uttered. She felt no anger, only a cold, analytical resolve. Each data point was a piece of the puzzle, a thread in the intricate tapestry of discriminatory practice. Then came Eliza Vance's response. It was concise, professional, and offered precisely the information Lena needed. Eliza confirmed that Lena's experience aligned with common patterns of racial steering and provided details about the NFHA's tester program. More importantly, Eliza included a discreet invitation to connect with a small, informal network of other Black professionals in the city who had faced similar challenges in the housing market. Shared experiences can often illuminate systemic issues, Eliza had written. Lena acted on it immediately. She sent out carefully worded, anonymous inquiries through the network, posing her questions broadly. Has anyone experienced unusual resistance or redirection when attempting to purchase homes in specific affluent neighborhoods in our city? Any particular agents or brokerages stand out? The responses began to trickle in, not as a flood, but as a steady, chilling drip. A young Black architect, denied a showing in a prestigious historic district, was told the area was not quite ready for change. A successful Black entrepreneur, interested in a property near the city's exclusive country club, was informed by his agent that the club lifestyle might not align with your personal preferences. And then, a direct hit. Two separate individuals, a university professor and a corporate lawyer, both Black, both with impeccable financial profiles, both explicitly named Arthur Sterling as an agent who had subtly, but firmly, steered them away from Arbor Ridge, using almost identical language to what Lena had heard. He told me the neighborhood was very particular and implied my children might struggle to find their place in the schools, wrote the professor. The lawyer recounted, Sterling spent an entire viewing educating me on the long-standing traditions of Arbor Ridge residents and suggested a more modern and adaptable community would be a better fit. Lena read through these accounts, a cold clarity settling over her. This wasn't just her experience. This was a pattern, a meticulous, well-rehearsed strategy deployed by Arthur Sterling and perhaps others to maintain invisible, yet impenetrable, walls of exclusion. Her own initial intuition had been chillingly accurate. He wasn't just steering her away from a house. He was actively policing the racial demographics of an entire neighborhood, one polite conversation at a time. The game had widened, and Lena Thorne was now not just fighting for her family's home, but for a fundamental principle of justice. The quiet storm she had set in motion was beginning to gather strength. Eliza Vance, a woman whose calm demeanor belied a formidable intellect and an unyielding commitment to justice, reviewed Lena's meticulously compiled ledger and the corroborating testimonies from the informal network. The data points, disparate in their origin, formed an undeniable constellation of discriminatory practice. Textbook racial steering. Eliza murmured to herself, tapping a pen against her legal pad. And Sterling is either very good at it or very complacent. The National Fair Housing Alliance operates with a quiet efficiency, its methods designed to be both discreet and legally unassailable. Lena's initial report, bolstered by the anecdotal evidence, provided the crucial justification for activating a full-scale tester investigation. This was the higher system Lena had envisioned, moving with deliberate, almost invisible, force. The first wave of testers was deployed. 2 distinct profiles were created, identical in every measurable metric save for one: race. Both were highly educated professionals, financially qualified for properties in Arbor Ridge, with similar family structures and housing preferences. Both possessed impeccable credit scores, pre-approval letters from reputable lenders, and a clear, stated interest in the Rosewood Lane property specifically, and Arbor Ridge generally. Tester A, a white woman named Sarah, a marketing executive, contacted Sterling Realty. Her initial conversation with Arthur Sterling was, as expected, effusive. Sterling lauded her excellent taste and immediately offered multiple viewing slots for Rosewood Lane, along with several other prime properties in Arbor Ridge. He spoke enthusiastically about the neighborhood's prestigious schools, vibrant social scene, and the excellent return on investment for homes in the area. His tone was welcoming, engaging, and genuinely helpful. Sarah meticulously documented every detail of their interaction, including Sterling's open willingness to facilitate her interest in Arbor Ridge. Tester B, a black man named David, a university professor, contacted Sterling just 2 days later. David's profile was nearly identical to Sarah's, right down to the pre-approved mortgage amount. His initial conversation with Sterling started politely, but a subtle shift quickly occurred, much like Lena's own experience. Sterling was less available, less enthusiastic. He began, almost immediately, to gently redirect David. Professor Miller, Sterling had purred, his voice oozing with a practiced, paternalistic concern. Arbor Ridge is, as you know, quite a unique enclave. Many of our residents appreciate the established rhythms of life there. Given your background in academia, you might find the artsy and intellectual vibe of the Willow Creek area more stimulating. It's truly burgeoning with creative energy, and the properties offer a different kind of community engagement. Willow Creek, like Silver Creek, was a diverse, yet significantly less affluent neighborhood, a stark contrast to the exclusivity of Arbor Ridge. David politely but firmly reiterated his interest in Arbor Ridge, and Sterling reluctantly agreed to see what could be arranged, but without the same immediate promise of a viewing given to Sarah. Over the next few weeks, a carefully orchestrated series of these paired tests unfolded. Each time, the results were chillingly consistent. White testers were welcomed with open arms into Arbor Ridge, shown multiple properties, and given detailed information about the community's benefits. Black testers, despite identical qualifications, were subtly steered away, met with vague excuses, or offered properties in demonstrably less desirable neighborhoods. The phrases Sterling used were almost identical to those he had employed with Lena: adjustment, unique character, established residence, more vibrant cultural landscape elsewhere. In some cases, testers even managed to surreptitiously record portions of their conversations, capturing the insidious microaggressions in Sterling's smooth, charming voice. Lena, meanwhile, played her own subtle game of cat and mouse. She continued to interact with Sterling, expressing continued interest in Arbor Ridge properties, even feigning interest in some of the Silver Creek listings he sent her, all while meticulously logging every exchange. Sterling, confident in his long-standing tactics and his local reputation, remained oblivious to the invisible net tightening around him. He saw Lena as a persistent but ultimately misguided client whom he would eventually manage into a more suitable home. He was a master of his small, insular world, utterly unaware that the ground beneath his feet was being systematically undermined by a force far greater than himself. One afternoon, Lena received a call from Sterling. "Dr. Thorne," he announced, a note of forced triumph in his voice. "Good news. A delightful property, very similar to Rosewood Lane, has just come on the market in Meadowbrook. It's a wonderful family home, excellent schools, and a much more accessible commute for you, I imagine. Meadowbrook was yet another diverse, middle-class neighborhood, a further step removed from Arbor Ridge's exclusivity. Thank you, Mr. Sterling, Lena replied, her voice calm and even. However, as I've stated repeatedly, my family's priority is Arbor Ridge. I'm quite content with the commute. I would appreciate it if you could focus on properties within that specific community. A brief, almost imperceptible sigh from Sterling. Of course, Dr. Thorne. Just trying to broaden your horizons. Arbor Ridge is simply not for everyone, you see. Lena smiled, a tight, knowing smile that Sterling, over the phone, could not see. I understand, Mr. Sterling, she said, but it is for my family, and I am quite confident in our ability to discern what is and is not for us. She hung up, her gaze falling upon her meticulous ledger. Each line item was a piece of Sterling's unwitting confession, building a case that was becoming not just strong, but irrefutable. The quiet storm was no longer gathering. It was beginning its relentless, systematic approach. Here is the 6th chapter, Whispers and Witnesses, revealing how the investigation begins to uncover broader patterns and unearth hidden testimonies. The sheer volume and consistency of the NFHA's tester reports left no room for doubt. Sterling's methods were not isolated incidents, but a systemic practice. Eliza Vance presented the compiled data to Lena during a discreet, encrypted video call. The screen, filled with charts, graphs, and anonymized transcripts, painted a stark, undeniable picture. The pattern is irrefutable, Lena, Eliza stated, her voice quiet but firm. We have enough here to initiate formal legal proceedings against Sterling and his brokerage. But to truly expose the systemic nature of this, to create lasting change, we need more. We need voices. We need witnesses. Lena understood immediately. Data was powerful, but human stories resonated. Leveraging her own quiet professionalism and the growing reputation of the NFHA's investigation, Lena and Eliza began to reach out. They tapped into Lena's professional network, the same one that had provided the initial corroborating anecdotes. The news of the formal NFHA investigation, though still under wraps, created a ripple of cautious hope. Slowly, hesitantly, people began to come forward. Not just Black professionals, but also a few former junior agents from Sterling Realty. These were individuals who, for years, had witnessed Sterling's practices firsthand, some even participating under duress or out of a misguided sense of loyalty. Their testimonies added another damning layer to the case. One former agent, Sarah Chun, a young woman who had left Sterling Realty disillusioned, contacted Eliza directly. Mr. Sterling had a code for clients, she revealed, her voice strained with a mixture of guilt and relief. If it was a white family, especially one with kids, and they inquired about Arbor Ridge, it was top priority, prime opportunity. If it was a Black family, regardless of their qualifications, it was always consider their adjustment, offer alternatives with more cultural vibrancy. He never said it directly, never left a paper trail, but we all knew what he meant. It was just how things were done. Sarah described how Sterling would subtly praise her for managing client expectations when she successfully steered Black clients away from Arbor Ridge, and how he would quietly reprimand her if she pushed too hard for a Black family to view an Arbor Ridge property, citing misalignment with community values. Another witness, a prominent Black dentist named Dr. Samuel Sam Jones, recounted his own frustrating experience with Sterling 5 years prior. I had just received partner at my practice, Sam explained, his frustration still palpable. My wife and I, we wanted to move our family into a neighborhood with excellent schools. We found a beautiful house in Arbor Ridge. Sterling told me it was just sold the day before my scheduled viewing. A week later, a white colleague of mine, who incidentally earns less, bought that exact house through Sterling. When I confronted Sterling, he merely smiled and said, "Timing is everything in this market, Dr. Jones. Perhaps Meadowbrook would be a better fit for your family dynamic." I let it go then. I shouldn't have. Lena listened to these stories, her heart heavy, but her resolve hardening. Each testimony was a confirmation of her own experience, a validation of the insidious, almost invisible, barriers that people of color faced in their pursuit of equity and opportunity. the weight of evidence was shifting. This wasn't just about Arthur Sterling. It was about the culture he had fostered, the system that allowed him to operate with impunity, and the complicity of those who benefited from, or turned a blind eye to, his practices. The investigation began to expand beyond Sterling's individual actions. Eliza's team looked into Sterling Realty as a whole, scrutinizing its marketing materials, agent training protocols, and internal sales data. They found subtle, yet consistent, patterns. Advertising properties in Arbor Ridge predominantly in publications and online platforms targeted at affluent white audiences, while showcasing properties in diverse neighborhoods in broader, more inclusive media. The narrative being crafted was one of intentional, systemic bias. The original false accusations against Lena, which had briefly landed her in jail in a parallel universe of what-ifs, were now understood in a different light. While her legal journey here was about a house, the underlying mechanism of prejudice and power abuse was eerily similar. The casual assumption of her unsuitability, the dismissal of her qualifications, the paternalistic tone, these were all hallmarks of a system designed to keep people like her in their place. Lena knew that Sterling would likely never face criminal charges for what he had done to her and others in the housing market. The nature of racial steering, with its reliance on coded language and implicit bias, made direct legal proof challenging. But what he had done was a profound moral failing, a breach of professional ethics, and a violation of civil rights. And for that, she intended to hold him accountable. The unmasking was almost complete. The stage was being set for the higher system of justice to assert itself. The collective weight of Lena's meticulous ledger, the NFHA's exhaustive tester reports, and the growing chorus of witness testimonies created an undeniable momentum. The investigation, spearheaded by Eliza Vance, was no longer merely a discreet inquiry into Arthur Sterling. It had blossomed into a full-blown examination of Sterling Realty's culture and the broader implications for fair housing in the region. Eliza's team, armed with compelling preliminary evidence, secured subpoenas for Sterling Realty's internal records. What they uncovered painted a damning picture of not just individual prejudice, but institutionalized complicity. Sales data revealed a stark demographic divide. Properties in Arbor Ridge were almost exclusively sold to white clients, while an overwhelming majority of black clients were directed towards and closed on homes in Silver Creek, Meadowbrook, and other diverse areas. This pattern was statistically improbable, a clear indicator of deliberate steering. Further digging unearthed internal communications that, while carefully worded, provided undeniable context to Sterling's methods. Eliza's team found emails from Sterling to other agents, praising them for maintaining neighborhood character or preserving client expectations when they successfully rerouted black buyers. There were also thinly veiled directives about market positioning that implicitly, yet clearly, instructed agents to prioritize certain demographics for specific neighborhoods. One particularly damning internal memo, circulated by Sterling himself, outlined strategies for client community alignment, detailing how to gently educate potential buyers about the uniqueness of certain areas, with clear, coded examples of phrases that mirrored those he'd used with Lena and the testers. The investigation escalated to include interviews with members of the local real estate board. Initially, they expressed shock and dismay, asserting their commitment to fair housing laws. However, under closer scrutiny, it became clear that the board's oversight had been, at best, negligent, and at worst, complicit. Sterling, a long-standing and highly influential figure in the local real estate scene, had cultivated relationships that afforded him a degree of immunity. Complaints against him, though few and often vague due to the subtle nature of his tactics, had been consistently dismissed or downplayed by the board, often without thorough investigation. His reputation, his charm, and his economic influence had effectively shielded him for years. The fabric of Sterling's carefully constructed world began to fray. Local newspapers, catching wind of the impending action by the NFHA, began to publish speculative articles. While no names were yet confirmed, the whispers of a major fair housing investigation involving a prominent local brokerage began to spread, causing unease within the exclusive enclave Sterling had so assiduously protected. Lena watched the unfolding events with a calm, surgical detachment. She continued her daily life, her demanding surgeries, her precious time with Marcus and Chloe. But beneath the surface, her focus remained sharp. She met regularly with Eliza, refining her own testimony, ensuring every detail, every nuance, was perfectly calibrated. She wasn't just a victim. She was a key witness, an architect of the truth. The realization deepened within her that this was far more than just her being denied a house. This was about dismantling a deeply ingrained system of exclusion that had quietly, politely, and effectively denied countless Black families the opportunity to build wealth, access better schools, and simply live where they chose. The only one's comment, initially a personal slight, now resonated as a chilling declaration of intent to keep it that way. The local political landscape also began to feel the tremors. City council members, and even the mayor's office, sensing the shifting tide of public opinion and the looming threat of negative publicity, started making cautious statements about transparency and ensuring equity. The tide was turning, slowly but irrevocably, against the old guard and their comfortable, discriminatory practices. Arthur Sterling, oblivious to the full scope of the investigation, felt only a growing annoyance. His phone rang more often with calls from concerned clients. His colleagues seemed less jovial, and his appointments for Arbor Ridge were, for the first time in years, genuinely dwindling. He attributed it to market jitters or unwarranted gossip. He still viewed Lena Thorne as a persistent, perhaps slightly misguided, client, now just a minor irritant. He had no idea that her quiet first strike had activated a legal and investigative juggernaut that was meticulously charting every crack in his perfectly polished facade, ready to bring the entire discriminatory edifice crashing down. The system, once veiled, was now laid bare, ready for its reckoning. The hearing room was packed, hushed with an almost reverent tension. Not a courtroom in the traditional sense, but an official tribunal convened by the State Real Estate Commission, with oversight from the National Fair Housing Alliance. It was a formal proceeding, open to the public, though attendance was limited, mostly comprising legal professionals, a few journalists, and concerned citizens from both Arbor Ridge and the communities Sterling had sought to exclude. At the head of a long, polished oak table sat a panel of 3 commissioners, their faces stern and unyielding. To their right sat Eliza Vance and her NFHA team, a quiet force of legal expertise. To their left, Arthur Sterling, flanked by his own lawyers, his usual polished charm now replaced by a tense, almost sickly pallor. His silver hair seemed a shade less lustrous, his expensive suit a little too tight around his visibly straining shoulders. Dr. Lena Thorne entered the room with quiet dignity, her gaze sweeping over the assembled faces, betraying no hint of nerves. She was impeccably dressed in a tailored navy suit, her posture erect, her expression one of focused resolve. She took her seat beside Eliza, a palpable sense of purpose radiating from her. The proceedings began with Eliza Vance's opening statement, a concise yet devastating outline of the NFHA's investigation. She presented the statistical anomalies, the meticulously documented pair tester reports, and the chilling consistency of Sterling's discriminatory language. She projected onto a large screen the anonymized transcripts of Sterling's interactions, highlighting phrases like, "You'd be the only ones," and adjustment for newcomers. A collective murmur swept through the room as the subtle malice of the words, stripped of their charming delivery, became starkly apparent. Then, Lena was called to testify. She approached the stand, took the oath, and settled into the witness chair, facing the panel with an unwavering gaze. Her voice, clear and steady, filled the room as she recounted her experience, not with emotion, but with the cold, unassailable logic of a surgeon presenting a diagnosis. She detailed her initial excitement for Rosewood Lane, her specific financial qualifications, and her family's desire for the Arbor Ridge School District. Mr. Sterling's initial enthusiasm quickly waned when I clearly expressed interest in Arbor Ridge, Lena stated, her narrative devoid of hyperbole. He began to subtly, yet consistently, redirect me to other neighborhoods, using phrases that, while appearing benign, carried a clear, discriminatory implication. She then recited, from her meticulously kept ledger, Sterling's exact words, including the infamous, "You'd be the only ones" comment. His concern, he stated, was for my family's adjustment. I interpreted this as a polite refusal to show me properties in a neighborhood he implicitly deemed unsuitable for a family like mine, based solely on our race. Sterling's lawyers attempted to cross-examine Lena, suggesting she had misunderstood Sterling's well-intentioned advice, or that her perception was colored by external factors. Lena met each attempt with quiet, factual precision, dissecting their arguments with the same acuity she applied to a complex surgical case. Did Mr. Sterling explicitly state he would not show you homes because of your race, Dr. Thorne? One lawyer pressed, a sneer barely concealed in his voice. Mr. Sterling did not need to state it explicitly, Lena replied, her voice calm. His actions, his consistent redirection, and his specific choice of language, when viewed against the backdrop of fair housing law, spoke volumes. It was a well-practiced pattern, not an isolated comment. Next, the NFHA presented the testimony of the former Sterling Realty agent, Sarah Chun. Her voice, trembling slightly but resolute, described the internal culture of the brokerage, the code for handling black clients, and the implicit pressure to conform to Sterling's discriminatory practices. Dr. Samuel Jones, the dentist, then shared his story of the just-sold Arbor Ridge house that mysteriously reappeared on the market for a white colleague. Each testimony was a hammer blow, chipping away at Sterling's carefully constructed edifice of plausible deniability. When Arthur Sterling finally took the stand, he was a shadow of his former self. His charm was gone, replaced by a defensive arrogance. He attempted to dismiss Lena's claims as misunderstandings, the tester reports as biased setups, and the former employee's testimonies as disgruntled fabrications. He insisted he was a community builder and a champion of homeowner satisfaction, always acting in his client's best interests. Mr. Sterling, Eliza Vance asked, her voice cutting through his bluster, do you believe a family's race impacts their ability to adjust to a particular neighborhood? Sterling hesitated, visibly uncomfortable. No, of course not. But culture, community fit, these are important considerations. I merely try to ensure my clients find a place where they will truly belong. He offered a weak, forced smile, but it failed to connect with his fearful eyes. And yet, Eliza continued, mercilessly, your internal memos instruct agents to educate certain clients about the uniqueness of Arbor Ridge, using the exact coded language you employed with Dr. Thorne and our testers. How do you reconcile your stated commitment to fair housing with these documented practices? Sterling stammered, his carefully constructed lies beginning to crumble under the relentless assault of irrefutable evidence. He looked desperate, cornered. The air in the room was thick with the scent of his impending downfall. The local power, once seemingly unshakable, was now exposed, naked and vulnerable before the scrutiny of a higher, impartial justice. The deliberation was swift, the evidence overwhelmingly conclusive. The panel of commissioners, their faces etched with the gravity of their decision, returned to the hearing room, their verdict hanging in the air like a pronouncement of fate. Arthur Sterling, slumped in his chair, avoided Lena's gaze, his eyes fixed on some distant, invisible point. The lead commissioner, a stern-faced woman with an unblemished record, cleared her throat. Based on the comprehensive evidence presented by the National Fair Housing Alliance, including Dr. Thorne's meticulously documented testimony, the corroborating accounts of other affected individuals, the expert analysis of our paired tester program, and the damning internal communications from Sterling Realty, this commission finds Mr. Arthur Sterling and Sterling Realty in direct violation of state and federal fair housing acts. A collective gasp, then a ripple of murmurs, swept through the room. Sterling flinched, his head snapping up, a flicker of disbelief, then dawning horror crossing his face. The commissioner continued, her voice resonating with authority. Effective immediately, Mr. Arthur Sterling's real estate license is hereby permanently revoked. Furthermore, Sterling Realty will face substantial fines, a mandated cessation of all operations for a period of 6 months to undergo a complete internal restructuring, and compulsory, independently audited fair housing training for all remaining and future employees. She then outlined further penalties, including a civil judgment for damages against Sterling and his brokerage, and a formal recommendation to the Attorney General's office for a broader investigation into systemic discriminatory practices within the regional real estate market. The hammer had fallen, not with a bang, but with the measured, inexorable force of a system finally, decisively, correcting itself. Sterling's lawyers, defeated and ashen, could offer no defense. Arthur Sterling himself sat frozen, his empire of polite prejudice crumbling around him, exposed and ridiculed. His charm, his local power, his carefully cultivated network of influence. None of it could stand against the truth that Lena Thorne had so patiently, so methodically, unearthed. The story exploded in local and then national headlines. Real estate kingpin dethroned in fair housing scandal. Surgeon exposes systemic racism in elite neighborhood. The articles featured Lena's unwavering image, her quiet strength, and the meticulousness of her case. The public conversation shifted dramatically, forcing a long-overdue reckoning with the subtle, insidious forms of discrimination that had festered beneath the surface of seemingly progressive communities. In the aftermath, the changes were profound. The State Real Estate Commission implemented stricter oversight, proactive testing programs, and more severe penalties for discriminatory practices. Other brokerages, wary of similar investigations, initiated their own internal reviews and diversity training. The hidden walls, once so impenetrable, began to crack and crumble. Lena, though exhausted, felt a profound, quiet sense of accomplishment. She had sought not just personal vindication, but systemic change, and she had achieved it. Eliza Vance, shaking her hand after the verdict, offered a genuine, "Thank you, Dr. Thorne. You didn't just win a case, you moved mountains." A few months later, Lena and her children were no longer house hunting. After the scandal, a newly formed, genuinely inclusive real estate agency, founded by former agents disillusioned with the old guard, approached her. They found her an even more perfect home, not the original Rosewood Lane property, but one in a vibrant, truly diverse part of Arbor Ridge that had opened its doors, metaphorically and literally, after the shake-up. This house boasted an even larger backyard, a sun-drenched study, and, most importantly, neighbors who welcomed them with genuine warmth, not veiled judgment. The final scene unfolds on a sun-drenched afternoon. Marcus and Chloe, their laughter echoing freely, chase each other across a sprawling, emerald green lawn. Chloe, ever the adventurer, tries to climb a sturdy oak tree, while Marcus, ever the strategist, builds an elaborate fort out of blankets on the patio. Lena watches them from the sunlit study. A new sense of peace settled in her heart. She's at her desk, not working on a surgical report, but on a proposal for a community outreach program, collaborating with local organizations to educate new homebuyers about fair housing rights. She glances out the window, a gentle smile playing on her lips. The neighborhood children, a diverse mix of races and backgrounds, are playing together down the street, their joyful shouts mingling in the afternoon air. The unseen walls had been brought down, brick by painful brick, not by anger or confrontation, but by intelligence, dignity, and an unwavering commitment to justice. Lena Thorne had not just bought a house. She had helped build a better community, a place where her children, and all children, could truly belong. The future, finally, looked bright, open, and undeniably, beautifully, their own.